Hello, so this is a response to your video, which was a response to Happy Cappy's video about prayer. So I think in this video I kind of just want to try and shed some light on the theist's perspective when it comes to prayer, and kind of talk about their intentions and emphasize that I think it's important for us to try and understand the other person's subjective views about prayer, because I think we'll find it less offensive if we realize that they're really not trying to offend us when they say that they're going to pray for us. And then later I'll address the fact that you think prayer in itself is offensive because it's potentially harmful. I think that's what you said, and maybe like psychologically damaging. But first, I think I'd like to talk about two situations in which a theist, or more specifically, I think in this circumstance we're talking about a Christian, would say, I will pray for you. The first and the most common is when, let's say, the person that they want to pray for has been through some kind of hard situation, like somebody died, or they lost their job, or some other unpleasant kind of ordeal. In that situation, the Christian will say, I'll pray for you, or you'll be in my prayers. And in the mind of the theist, this is the best thing that they could do for you. They're not trying to insult you or be lazy and say, well, I don't really feel like, making any kind of emotional investment, so I'm just going to say I'll pray for you, or I don't want to help you in any other way, so I'll say I'm going to pray for you. And some people do that, but I think in most circumstances, if it's a decent person, they'll do this because they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. And in some situations they'll think there's nothing else that I can really do for this person. I mean, I can just be there for them, and I can say I'll pray for them. And I think in that situation, there's no reason to really be offended by that person's kind gesture, because you know that they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. Now, the second situation, and one in which I can clearly see why atheists would be upset, is one in which, let's say, a theist and an atheist get into some sort of fight or altercation, and there's an exchange of words, and the atheist says something to the theist doesn't like, or they think is morally wrong, and the theist says, that's just so sad. I'll just pray for you. Okay, clearly the theist is trying to insult you. And in that situation, we should be offended. And I've experienced that, and it's unpleasant, because you know that the person is kind of saying, you're really messed up. You need prayer. See, that's kind of different. In that situation, I think we should be offended. But in the earlier situation, in the previous situation, I think, we should just see that this person is trying to do something nice for us. Although we don't really subscribe to that whole idea that there's somebody up there that's going to hear and intervene in our lives, we can just see that as an individual, that person is trying to do something kind, and to kind of appreciate their gesture. And I guess I wrote some notes so I wouldn't get sidetracked and start rambling on about nothing. So I guess now I kind of just want to address the fact that you think that prayer is harmful. I can definitely see what you mean by that. Prayer definitely for some people can be psychologically damaging, in that they pray for something and it doesn't happen. But I think a lot of Christians play this mind game, because as a former Christian I used to do this, and in some ways it prevents cognitive dissonance. So what it is, okay, let me give an example. It's very shallow, but just, for the purposes of trying to explain what I mean. Okay, I pray for a car, right? Now, if I get the car, then I'll say, oh, God is so good, he answers prayers. If I pray for the car and I don't get the car, then I'll say, God's will be done. Maybe I guess I didn't need the car, or I shouldn't have gotten it. So I think that Christians kind of play that mind game. Oh well, if what I want to happen doesn't happen, then it's God's will. So either way, it's going to be okay. Whether if I get what I want, it's okay. If I don't get what I want, it's okay. So I think as long as the Christian kind of thinks like that, it's not really a problem for them. And yes, it's a game, but for them that's good, or whatever. And you also mentioned that you think it's like maybe completely destructive and useless, but I'd like to point to the fact that it is rewarding in some way for theists to pray. If it wasn't, they wouldn't do it. And basically it just comes down to brain chemistry. I mean, when you pray, there's decreased activity in the parietal lobe, which can kind of explain that feeling of connection with God or oneness, a sort of depersonalization. And also there's an increase in dopamine, so it feels good, and we all know people do things that feel good. So prayer is positively reinforced because it's rewarding in some way. And I think that we know that it's basically just all up here, but for theists, it can reduce stress levels and has other therapeutic benefits. Now, is it real? Does it really work? No, I don't believe that it does. But I don't think we can kind of dismiss it and say it's completely useless and it's harmful necessarily. And I think you also mentioned that you won't accept it, and I respect that, and I don't really accept it to be true. I don't think when you pray anything happens. I think a lot of times people make things happen and give God the credit, or things just happen. It's serendipity. But I do think that it's very important for us to try to understand the other person's perspective.